The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Nicole Martinez stared at her name written in careful script across cream-colored paper, her hands trembling as she recognized the handwriting. It wasn't from her husband David. She knew his hurried scrawl by heart. This was different, deliberate. The return address showed Rebecca's apartment across town. Inside, divorce papers, already signed, not by David, but by Rebecca Thompson, her sister-in-law, using a signature that looked suspiciously like Nicole's own. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The confession letter underneath made everything clear. I've been sabotaging you from the beginning. Every fight, every misunderstanding, every reason David had to doubt you, it all came from me. I thought if I could just make him see how wrong you were for each other, he'd finally notice me the way I've always noticed him. But this moment was still 3 years away. Our story begins much earlier, in a small coffee shop in downtown Portland, where Nicole first met the Thompson family and unknowingly stepped into a web of deception that would nearly destroy her life. Nicole had always believed in signs from the universe, but she never expected one to come in the form of spilled coffee and a very apologetic stranger. The meeting happened on a Tuesday morning in October when the Portland rain was doing its usual dance against the windows of Grind Coffee House, and Nicole was running late for her interview at the architectural firm downtown. She was juggling her portfolio, purse, and an oversized latte when someone bumped into her from behind. Hot coffee cascaded down her cream-colored blouse, the one she'd specifically chosen because it looked professional and confident. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." The voice belonged to a tall man with warm brown eyes and the kind of smile that made you forget you were supposed to be angry. "Please, let me help you clean that up." David Thompson introduced himself while dabbing ineffectively at her shirt with napkins, his face flushed with embarrassment. He was an engineer at a tech startup, running late for his own meeting, and somehow his genuine distress over ruining her outfit made Nicole laugh instead of cry. "It's actually perfect," she said, surprising them both. "I was nervous about this interview, and now I have a great story about why I'm late and why I smell like coffee." David insisted on buying her a replacement shirt from the boutique next door. As Nicole changed in the coffee shop's tiny bathroom, she caught herself smiling in the mirror. The new blouse was actually prettier than her original choice, a soft blue that brought out her eyes. When she emerged, David was still waiting, having clearly blown off his own appointment. "I can't let you be late because of me," Nicole protested. "Too late for that," he grinned. "Besides, I think this might be more important." The interview went better than Nicole had ever hoped. The coffee smell had indeed broken the ice, and her portfolio spoke for itself. Sarah Chen, the senior partner, hired her on the spot to join their residential design team. As Nicole walked out of the building, she found David waiting on the sidewalk, holding 2 fresh cups of coffee. "Celebration drink?" he offered. "I figured you got the job. You have that victorious glow." They talked for 2 hours on a bench in Pioneer Courthouse Square, rain forgotten under the coffee shop's awning they'd claimed. David told her about his work developing sustainable building technologies. Nicole shared her dreams of designing affordable housing that didn't sacrifice beauty for budget. Their conversation flowed like they'd known each other for years. "I have a confession," David said as the afternoon light began to fade. "I wasn't actually running late this morning. I saw you through the window, struggling with all your things, and I wanted an excuse to talk to you." Nicole raised an eyebrow. "So you deliberately spilled coffee on me?" "The coffee spilling was completely accidental," he laughed, "but I'd been standing behind you in line for 10 minutes trying to work up the courage to say hello." Their first official date happened 3 days later. David picked her up in his well-worn Honda Civic, apologizing for the fact that the radio only worked on AM stations and the passenger door required a specific technique to open properly. Nicole found his nervousness endearing, so different from the overconfident guys she usually met. He took her to a small Italian restaurant in the Pearl District, the kind of place where the owner's grandmother still made the pasta by hand. Over candlelight and wine, Nicole learned that David had grown up in a close-knit family in Lake Oswego. His parents had been married for 32 years, and his younger sister, Rebecca, was finishing her master's degree in psychology at Portland State. Rebecca's the brilliant one in the family, David said with obvious pride. She's doing her thesis on family dynamics and relationship psychology. She's always analyzing everyone, trying to figure out what makes people tick. Sounds intimidating, Nicole admitted. What if she doesn't like me? Impossible, David said firmly. She'll love you. Rebecca wants nothing more than for me to be happy, and you make me happier than I've been in years. The following weekend, David invited Nicole to his parents' house for Sunday dinner, a Thompson family tradition that had apparently been sacred since the children were small. The house was a beautiful craftsman in one of Lake Oswego's tree-lined neighborhoods, with a wraparound porch and gardens that clearly received loving attention. Margaret Thompson welcomed Nicole with a warm hug and immediately put her to work helping with the salad, as if she'd been part of the family for years. Robert Thompson, a retired high school principal, regaled her with stories about David's childhood obsession with building elaborate structures out of anything he could find. We couldn't keep Lincoln logs in the house, Margaret laughed. David would build entire cities and then get upset when we had to take them apart for dinner. But it was meeting Rebecca that Nicole had been most nervous about. David's sister was stunning in an effortless way that made Nicole acutely aware of every flaw in her own appearance. Rebecca had the same warm brown eyes as David, but where his face was open and easy to read, hers held a depth that made Nicole feel like she was being carefully studied. "So you're the mysterious Nicole who's been monopolizing my brother's time?" Rebecca said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "David's told me so much about you." "Oh, good things, I hope," Nicole replied, trying to match Rebecca's casual tone. "Oh, definitely. He's quite smitten." Rebecca's gaze was intense, analytical. "He says you're an architect?" "Residential design, mostly. I just started at Chen & Associates downtown." "How wonderful. David's always been attracted to creative types." There was something in the way Rebecca said it that made Nicole pause, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly what felt off. The dinner was lovely. Margaret's pot roast was perfect. Robert told entertaining stories about his former students, and David kept his hand on Nicole's knee under the table in a way that made her feel claimed and cherished. Rebecca was charming and engaging, asking thoughtful questions about Nicole's work and background. But throughout the evening, Nicole noticed small things. The way Rebecca's smile became more genuine when she was talking to David alone, how she found reasons to touch his arm or shoulder during conversation, the slight tightening around her eyes whenever David showed Nicole affection. Rebecca's studying family psychology, David had mentioned proudly when his sister launched into an explanation of her thesis research. She's particularly interested in attachment patterns and how they influence romantic relationships. "Fascinating," Nicole said, though something about the clinical way Rebecca described human connection made her uncomfortable. "I believe we're all products of our earliest relationships," Rebecca explained. "The patterns we learn in childhood determine everything about how we love as adults. Most people are completely unaware of these patterns, of course. They think they're making conscious choices, but really they're just repeating what feels familiar." Nicole felt like Rebecca was looking directly at her when she said this, though that was probably just her imagination. After dinner, while Margaret and Nicole were doing dishes, Rebecca cornered David in the living room. Nicole could hear their low voices but couldn't make out words. When David returned to the kitchen, he seemed slightly subdued. "Everything okay?" Nicole asked quietly. "Of course," David said, but his smile seemed forced. "Rebecca was just giving me her professional opinion about relationship psychology. She thinks it's important to be sure about compatibility before things get too serious." The drive back to Nicole's apartment was quieter than usual. David seemed lost in thought, and Nicole found herself wondering what exactly Rebecca had said to him. But when they reached her building, David walked her to the door and kissed her with the same warmth as always. "I had a wonderful time tonight," she said. "Your family is amazing." "They loved you," David assured her, "especially my parents. Mom's already planning to invite you for Thanksgiving." "And Rebecca?" David hesitated for just a moment. Rebecca needs time to warm up to new people. It's not personal, she's protective of family. But once she gets to know you better, I know you two will be great friends. Nicole wanted to believe him, but something in his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced himself. Still, she pushed the doubt aside. Every family had its dynamics, and she was probably overthinking things. As the weeks passed, Nicole and David's relationship deepened. They fell into comfortable routines: coffee dates before work, long walks along the Willamette River, lazy Sunday mornings reading the paper in bed. David was everything Nicole had hoped to find in a partner: kind, thoughtful, ambitious but not ruthless, and completely devoted to her. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The only shadow was Rebecca. It wasn't anything dramatic or obvious. Rebecca was always perfectly polite when they met, always interested in Nicole's work and opinions. But there were small comments that left Nicole feeling unsettled. Observations about Nicole's family background that were technically accurate, but somehow made her sound unstable. Questions about her previous relationships that felt more like interrogation than casual interest. "Rebecca's just thorough," David explained when Nicole finally mentioned feeling uncomfortable. "It's the psychology training. She can't help analyzing people." "It feels like she's looking for something wrong with me," Nicole admitted. "That's ridiculous," David said, but again, his tone suggested he wasn't entirely surprised by Nicole's observation. "Rebecca wants me to be happy. If she seems cautious, it's only because she cares about me." Nicole tried to accept this explanation, but the feeling persisted. At family gatherings, she noticed how Rebecca's attention always returned to David, how her laugh was brightest when he was telling a story, and how she found ways to insert herself into conversations between David and Nicole. But David seemed oblivious to it all, and Nicole began to wonder if she was being paranoid. Maybe it was just the natural protectiveness of a close sibling. Maybe she was reading too much into innocent behavior because she was insecure about her place in this tight-knit family. The first real test came when David invited Nicole to join the family for their annual ski trip to Mount Hood. It would be 4 days in a rented cabin, the longest time Nicole had spent with the Thompsons, and she was both excited and nervous about the opportunity to become closer to them. What she didn't know was that Rebecca had been planning something entirely different for those 4 days, something that would plant the first seeds of doubt in David's mind and begin the slow, careful process of destroying Nicole's relationship from the inside. The Mount Hood cabin was everything David had promised: rustic wood beams, a stone fireplace that dominated the living room, and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the snow-covered mountain like a postcard. Nicole felt her stress melting away as soon as they pulled up the winding driveway, David's hand squeezing hers as he pointed out the ski slopes they'd tackle tomorrow. "This is where I learned to ski," he said proudly. "Dad brought Rebecca and me here every winter since we were kids. Some of my best memories happened in this place." Robert was already unloading gear from their SUV, while Margaret directed traffic with the efficiency of someone who'd done this many times before. Rebecca emerged from the passenger seat looking effortlessly beautiful in designer ski wear that probably cost more than Nicole's monthly rent. "Nicole, you're in the loft room," Margaret announced. "It has the best view of the mountain. David, you're in your usual spot downstairs." Nicole felt a flutter of disappointment. She'd hoped they might share a room, but she understood this was a family tradition, and she was still relatively new to the group dynamic. "Don't look so disappointed," Rebecca said with a knowing smile. "Mom's old-fashioned about unmarried couples sharing beds under her roof. Even at 28, David still follows house rules." The first day on the slopes went perfectly. David was a patient teacher, helping Nicole navigate the beginner runs while Robert and Margaret tackled the more challenging trails. Rebecca, it turned out, was an expert skier who moved down the mountain with graceful confidence that made Nicole feel clumsy by comparison. "You're doing great," David encouraged as Nicole wobbled through another turn. "By the end of the week, you'll be ready for the intermediate slopes." But when they stopped for lunch at the mountain lodge, Rebecca made her first subtle move. "David, remember when you brought Jessica here?" Rebecca asked casually, picking at her salad. She was so natural on the slopes, like she'd been skiing her whole life. Nicole felt her stomach tighten. David had mentioned his ex-girlfriend Jessica only once, explaining that they dated for 2 years before breaking up 6 months ago. He'd been deliberately vague about the details, saying only that they'd grown apart. "Rebecca?" David's voice held a warning note. "What? I'm just remembering. Jessica loved these family trips. She fit right in from the beginning." Rebecca turned to Nicole with an innocent expression. "You're doing wonderfully too, of course. It just takes some people longer to find their rhythm." The comment stung more than Nicole wanted to admit. She'd been proud of her progress on the slopes, but now she felt like a fumbling amateur being compared to David's perfect ex-girlfriend. That evening, while Nicole was in the bathroom getting ready for dinner, she overheard Rebecca talking to David in the kitchen. "I like Nicole, I really do. But don't you think she seems a little intense? The way she watches you sometimes, like she's trying to figure out what you want her to be." "That's not fair, Rebecca. She's just nervous about fitting in with the family." "I know, and that's sweet. But Jessica was so comfortable with herself. You know, she never seemed to need your approval the way Nicole does. I just worry that Nicole might be more invested in the idea of this family than she is in you specifically." Nicole's heart pounded as she listened, frozen by the bathroom door. She wanted to march out and defend herself, but something held her back. What if Rebecca was right? What if she was trying too hard? When she finally emerged, David was setting the table alone, his expression troubled. Rebecca was nowhere to be seen. "Everything okay?" Nicole asked, trying to keep her voice light. "Of course," David said, but he didn't meet her eyes, just thinking about work stuff. Dinner was tense, though Nicole couldn't tell if she was imagining it or something had genuinely shifted. David seemed distracted, and Margaret kept shooting concerned glances between her son and Nicole. Only Rebecca appeared completely at ease, regaling them with stories from her graduate program and asking thoughtful questions about Nicole's work. The second day started better. Nicole felt more confident on the slopes and managed to make it down several runs without falling. David's mood seemed to have improved, and he was back to his usual encouraging self. But during their lunch break, Rebecca struck again. "Nicole, can I ask you something personal?" Rebecca said as they sat by the lodge's massive windows. David and his parents were still in the food line. "What happened with your last serious relationship?" The question caught Nicole off guard. "Why do you ask?" "I'm sorry, it's the psychology training. I'm always curious about people's relationship patterns. David mentioned you'd been single for a while before you met him." Nicole felt defensive, but tried to answer honestly. "I dated someone for 3 years in college, but we wanted different things. Then I had a few shorter relationships that didn't work out. Nothing dramatic." Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. "And what about family? David mentioned your parents divorced when you were young." "When I was 15, Nicole's voice was tighter now. "My mom remarried when I was 17. My dad lives in California." "That must have been difficult. Divorce can really impact how we view commitment as adults. Sometimes people who experienced family instability become either overly clingy or emotionally distant in their own relationships." Nicole stared at Rebecca, finally understanding what was happening. "Are you psychoanalyzing me?" "Not at all," Rebecca said with a soft laugh. "I'm just interested in understanding what makes people tick. It's not personal." But it felt deeply personal. When David returned to the table, Nicole was quiet, Rebecca's words echoing in her head. Was she being clingy? Was her enthusiasm about joining the Thompson family actually a red flag? That night, David seemed distant again. When Nicole tried to initiate conversation, his responses were short and distracted. She finally gave up and went to bed early, lying awake in the loft room, staring at the mountains silhouetted against the star-filled sky. The third day brought fresh snow and perfect skiing conditions, but Nicole's confidence was shaken. She found herself second-guessing every move, every comment, every interaction with David's family. When she fell on an easy slope she'd mastered the day before, David's concern felt more like impatience. "Maybe you should take a break," he suggested. "You seem off today." "I'm fine," Nicole insisted, but she wasn't fine. She was spiraling, questioning everything about their relationship and her place in his life. During lunch, Rebecca made her boldest move yet.
David, I've been thinking about what we discussed last night, she said, glancing meaningfully at Nicole, about compatibility and long-term potential. Nicole's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. What did you discuss? David looked uncomfortable. Rebecca was just offering some perspective on relationships, professional perspective. Actually, Rebecca continued, I was telling David about some research I've been reading on attachment styles and relationship stability. It's fascinating how early childhood experiences shape our adult partnership patterns. Margaret looked confused. Rebecca, dear, perhaps this isn't an appropriate dinner conversation. Oh, I think it's important, Rebecca pressed on. For instance, people who experienced family instability often struggle with boundaries in relationships. They either become overly dependent or they sabotage good relationships because they don't believe they deserve them. The words hit Nicole like a physical blow. Rebecca was essentially diagnosing her in front of David's entire family, using her psychology training as a weapon disguised as academic interest. Rebecca, that's enough, Robert said firmly. But the damage was done. Nicole could see doubt creeping into David's expression and could feel the family's discomfort with the entire conversation. She excused herself from the table and went for a walk outside, needing air and space to process what had just happened. David found her 20 minutes later, sitting on the cabin's front steps, watching snowfall through the porch light. I'm sorry about that, he said, settling beside her. Rebecca gets carried away sometimes with her theories. Does she? Nicole asked quietly. Or is she just saying what you're already thinking? David was silent for a long moment. I don't know what you mean. You've been different since we got here, distant, like you're seeing me through new eyes. Nicole turned to face him. What exactly did Rebecca say to you last night? It's not important. It is to me. David sighed, his breath visible in the cold air. She raised some questions about whether we're moving too fast, about whether we really know each other well enough to be this serious. And what do you think? I think, David struggled with the words, I think maybe she has a point. We have been moving pretty fast. Maybe we should slow down a little, make sure we're building something real. Nicole felt something crack inside her chest. 3 days ago, David had been talking about introducing her to his extended family at Christmas. Now he was suggesting they pump the brakes because his sister had planted seeds of doubt. I see, Nicole said, proud that her voice remained steady.
It's not that I don't care about you, David said quickly. I do, a lot. But Rebecca made me realize that I might be caught up in the excitement of something new instead of really evaluating whether we're right for each other long term. Nicole stood up, brushing snow off her jeans. Well, I guess I should thank Rebecca for her professional insight. Nicole, don't be like that. Like what? Hurt that your sister convinced you we're not compatible after 3 months of dating? Nicole shook her head. You know what, David? If you're this easily swayed by someone else's opinion about our relationship, then maybe Rebecca is right. Maybe we aren't right for each other. She went inside, leaving David sitting alone in the snow. In the loft room, she quietly packed her bag, her hands shaking with anger and hurt. She could hear the family talking in low voices downstairs, but couldn't make out the words. The next morning, Nicole announced she was leaving early due to a work emergency. Margaret looked disappointed, Robert seemed concerned, and Rebecca appeared satisfied despite her expressions of sympathy. David drove her back to Portland in near silence. When they reached her apartment, he walked her to the door but made no move to come inside. I think we should take a break, he said, the words clearly rehearsed. Just to get some perspective, figure out what we really want. Nicole looked at him. This man she'd thought she was falling in love with, and saw a stranger. Someone who could be so easily manipulated by his sister's psychological games. You know what, David? You don't need to figure out what you want. Rebecca already decided for you. She went inside and closed the door, not waiting for his response. Through the window, she watched him stand there for a few minutes before finally walking back to his car. What Nicole didn't know was that Rebecca was already planning her next move. The seeds of doubt had been planted, but she needed to make sure they took root permanently. And she had the perfect opportunity coming up. David's birthday party next month, where she could introduce him to someone much more suitable than Nicole Martinez. someone who would appreciate his family properly. Someone like Rebecca herself. 2 weeks of silence stretched between Nicole and David like a canyon neither seemed willing to cross. Nicole threw herself into work, staying late at the architectural firm to avoid the empty hours at home where she might be tempted to call him. Her latest project, designing a community center for a low-income neighborhood, became her refuge, a place where she could channel her frustration into something productive. Sarah Chen noticed the change immediately. During their weekly design review, she studied Nicole's latest sketches with concern. "These are beautiful," Sarah said, "but they're also incredibly detailed. You've designed every doorknob, every light fixture. Are you sleeping?" "I sleep enough," Nicole deflected, but the truth was she spent most nights staring at her ceiling, replaying conversations from the ski trip, and wondering if Rebecca was right about her attachment issues. "Take the weekend off," Sarah ordered. "Get out of your head. Visit friends, go hiking, do something that doesn't involve blueprints." That Saturday, Nicole decided to visit her college roommate Emma, who lived in Seattle with her husband and 2 young children. The drive up I-5 gave her time to think, and by the time she reached Emma's suburban home, she'd almost convinced herself that the break with David might be for the best. Emma took one look at Nicole's face and sent her husband to the park with the kids. "Spill," Emma commanded, settling onto the couch with 2 large cups of coffee. "You look like someone who's been hit by a truck and is still trying to figure out which direction it came from." Nicole found herself telling the whole story: the coffee shop meeting, the perfect early days, the ski trip, Rebecca's psychological manipulation, and David's willingness to believe his sister over his girlfriend. "So, let me get this straight," Emma said when Nicole finished. "This Rebecca person spent 3 days convincing your boyfriend that you're unstable, and instead of defending you, he decided you needed a break to figure things out." "When you put it like that, it sounds terrible." "Because it is terrible. Nicole, this isn't about you having attachment issues. This is about David having backbone issues." Emma leaned forward. "Did it ever occur to you that a grown man who lets his sister dictate his love life might not be the catch you thought he was?" The words stung because they contained a truth Nicole hadn't wanted to face. She'd been so focused on Rebecca's manipulation that she'd overlooked David's weakness in allowing it. Sunday evening, driving back to Portland, Nicole made a decision. She wouldn't wait for David to figure things out. She would move forward with her life, and if he wanted to be part of it, he could make that choice himself. But David, it turned out, was facing his own crisis of conscience. He'd spent the 2 weeks since the ski trip in a fog of confusion and regret. Rebecca's words echoed in his head, but so did memories of Nicole's laugh, the way she fit perfectly against his side during movie nights, her genuine excitement about his family traditions. Every time he reached for his phone to call her, Rebecca's voice whispered warnings about moving too fast, about Nicole's neediness, about the importance of being sure. The breaking point came when his coworker Marcus asked about Nicole during lunch. "How's the beautiful architect?" Marcus asked. "You two coming to my birthday party next weekend?" "We're taking a break," he said, the words tasting bitter. Marcus nearly choked on his sandwich. "A break? Dude, you were talking about ring shopping like 3 weeks ago. What happened?" David found himself explaining Rebecca's concerns, Marcus's expression growing more incredulous with each word. "Let me get this straight," Marcus said. "Your sister, who has never had a serious relationship herself, convinced you that the woman you're crazy about is somehow wrong for you, and you listened to her?" "Rebecca has a master's in psychology." "Rebecca has a master's in being jealous of her brother's girlfriend," Marcus corrected bluntly. "David, I've met Nicole. She's amazing. She's kind, she's funny, she clearly adores you, and she gets along great with your parents. What exactly is the problem?" David couldn't answer, because when he really thought about it, there wasn't a problem. There were only Rebecca's carefully planted doubts and his own cowardice in believing them. That evening, David called Nicole. Her phone went straight to voicemail, and suddenly he was terrified that she'd already moved on, that his break had become permanent by default. He tried again the next day, and the next. Finally, on Thursday evening, Nicole answered. "Hello, David." Her voice was cool, professional, like she was talking to a distant acquaintance instead of someone she'd shared her bed and her dreams with. Nicole, thank God, I've been trying to reach you. I've been busy. What do you need? The question hit him like a slap. What did he need? He needed her laugh in his kitchen while they cooked breakfast. He needed her terrible singing in his shower. He needed her hand in his movies, her excitement about small things, her way of making everything in his life brighter. I need to see you, he said. I made a mistake. We made a mistake. This break was stupid. There was a long pause. Was it, or did you get the clarity you wanted? Nicole, please, can we talk in person? Another pause. I'm pretty busy this week. Maybe next week sometime. The casual dismissal was devastating. This was what he'd lost: her availability, her eagerness to see him, her openness to his affection. He'd traded it all for Rebecca's approval and his own uncertainty. How about dinner, Friday night, he pressed, that place in the Pearl District you liked? I already have plans for Friday. Saturday then? David, Nicole's voice was gentle but firm. I appreciate you calling, but I'm not interested in picking up where we left off. I spent 2 weeks thinking about what happened at the cabin, and I realized some things about what I want in a relationship. What do you want? I want someone who trusts his own judgment about me. I want someone who doesn't need his sister's permission to love me. I want someone who, when faced with a choice between his family's doubts and his girlfriend's feelings, at least tries to defend both instead of just choosing the easier path. Each word was like a nail in the coffin of their relationship. David closed his eyes, realizing fully for the first time what Rebecca's interference had cost him. I was an idiot, he said quietly. You're right about everything. But Nicole, I do love you. I've loved you since that first day in the coffee shop, and I should have fought for us instead of letting Rebecca's theories get in my head. Maybe you do love me, Nicole said, but you love avoiding conflict more. And I can't build a life with someone who thinks love is something you need to analyze and second guess. Please don't give up on us. I'm not giving up, David. I'm just not going backward. After she hung up, Nicole sat in her apartment feeling strangely hollow. She'd meant every word she said, but that didn't make it hurt less. Part of her had hoped David would fight harder, would have recognized Rebecca's manipulation sooner, would have chosen her over his sister's doubts. But he hadn't, and that told her everything she needed to know about where she really stood in his priorities. What Nicole didn't know was that Rebecca had been monitoring the situation carefully. She'd noticed David's distraction at family dinner Sunday night, had seen him checking his phone obsessively, had heard him mention Nicole's name with longing instead of relief. The break wasn't working the way Rebecca had planned. Instead of moving on, David was realizing what he'd lost, and that was unacceptable. It was time for phase 2 of Rebecca's plan. A plan that involved David's birthday party the following weekend, a carefully orchestrated chance meeting, and the introduction of someone who would make Nicole Martinez seem like a distant, complicated memory. Rebecca had been working on this backup strategy since the ski trip, cultivating a relationship with Amanda Sterling, a colleague from her graduate program who was everything Nicole wasn't: blonde, bubbly, from a stable upper-middle-class family, and most importantly, completely inexperienced with psychological manipulation. Amanda would be perfect for David, Rebecca had decided, sweet enough to make him forget Nicole, malleable enough to never challenge Rebecca's influence, and grateful enough for the introduction to never question Rebecca's motives. The birthday party would be Rebecca's masterpiece of social engineering. She'd invite Amanda, create opportunities for her and David to connect, and make sure Nicole's absence felt like a phantom pain throughout the evening. By the end of the night, Rebecca was confident David would see exactly what he should want in a partner: someone who fits seamlessly into the Thompson family dynamic without causing waves or requiring emotional labor. Someone who would never make Rebecca feel like an outsider in her own brother's life. The invitations went out Tuesday. David's birthday celebration would be at the family home, a casual gathering of close friends and relatives.
Rebecca personally called Amanda to invite her, mentioning that her brother was recently single and could probably use some cheering up. She did not, however, mention the party to Nicole. After all, they were on a break. Why would Nicole want to celebrate with someone who'd chosen his sister's judgment over their relationship? Rebecca's plan was falling into place perfectly. She just hadn't counted on Nicole having friends who were smarter than she'd anticipated, or on David having colleagues who weren't afraid to call out his mistakes. The birthday party was still 5 days away, but already the pieces were moving in ways Rebecca hadn't foreseen. And for the first time since the ski trip, she was about to discover that psychological manipulation was a game two people could play. Marcus Rivera had never considered himself a meddling person, but watching his friend David mope around the office for 3 weeks was testing his patience. When David mentioned his birthday party during their Friday coffee break, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "You know what? I'm going to ask Nicole if she wants to come," Marcus announced. David nearly spilled his coffee. "What? Marcus, no! We're taking a break, remember?" "You're taking a break. She's moved on. There's a difference." Marcus pulled out his phone. "I've got her number from when we all went to that baseball game. I'm inviting her as my friend, not yours." "That's a terrible idea. It'll be awkward." "For who? You? Good. Maybe awkward is what you need." Marcus was already typing. "Hey, Nicole, it's Marcus from David's work. I know things are complicated between you two, but I'd love for you to come to his birthday party Saturday night. You shouldn't have to lose all of us just because my friend is an idiot. Hope to see you there." He hit send before David could stop him. Across town, Nicole was finishing up a late dinner when her phone buzzed. She read Marcus's message twice, surprised by the invitation and touched by the sentiment. She'd assumed that taking a break with David meant losing access to all the people who'd become part of her life through him. Her first instinct was to decline. Seeing David at his own birthday party, surrounded by family and friends, would be painful. But then she thought about Rebecca's smug satisfaction, about how the woman had probably already planned for Nicole's absence, and something rebellious stirred in her chest. She typed back, "I'll be there. Thank you for thinking of me." Meanwhile, Rebecca was putting the finishing touches on her own plan. Amanda Sterling had agreed to come to the party, and Rebecca had spent the week carefully briefing her about David's situation. "He just got out of a relationship with someone who wasn't quite right for him," Rebecca explained during their coffee meeting Friday afternoon. She was intense, very clingy, always seemed to need his attention and approval. It was exhausting for him. Amanda, sweet and trusting, nodded sympathetically. "That sounds really difficult. I hope he's doing okay." "He's better now, but I think he could use some lightness in his life, someone fun and uncomplicated." Rebecca smiled. "Someone like you." "Oh, I don't know," Amanda blushed. "I'm not really looking for anything serious right now." "Who said anything serious? Just be yourself. David needs to remember that relationships can be easy and enjoyable." Rebecca felt confident as she drove home. Amanda was perfect, pretty without being threatening, sweet without being deep, interested without being intense. Everything Nicole wasn't. Saturday evening arrived with typical Oregon drizzle, casting a cozy atmosphere over the Thompson house. Margaret had outdone herself with decorations and David's favorite foods, while Robert manned the bar in the living room. The house filled quickly with David's friends, colleagues, and extended family. David stood near the kitchen, accepting birthday wishes, but clearly distracted. He kept glancing toward the door, and Rebecca knew exactly who he was hoping to see. "Stop looking for her," Rebecca said quietly, appearing at his elbow with a fresh beer. "She's not coming. You said yourself she had other plans." "I know, I just thought maybe—" "David, you need to let this go. Nicole made her feelings clear. It's time to move forward." As if summoned by Rebecca's confidence, Amanda Sterling appeared in the doorway, looking radiant in a flowing blue dress that complemented her blonde hair perfectly. She scanned the room uncertainly until Rebecca hurried over to greet her. "Amanda, you made it!" Rebecca's enthusiasm was genuine. Phase 2 was beginning exactly as planned. "Come on, let me introduce you to the birthday boy." David's polite smile became more genuine when he met Amanda. She was charming and easy to talk to, genuinely interested in his work, and refreshingly straightforward in her conversation. For the first time in weeks, David found himself laughing naturally. "See," Rebecca whispered to Margaret as they watched David and Amanda chat by the fireplace. "Isn't she lovely? So much more suitable than, well, you know." Margaret frowned slightly. "I liked Nicole, Rebecca. She seemed very sweet." "Sweet, yes, but not right for David. You'll see what I mean when you get to know Amanda better." But Rebecca's triumph was interrupted by commotion near the front door. Marcus had arrived, and he wasn't alone. Nicole stepped into the entryway, shaking raindrops from her dark hair, looking stunning in a simple black dress that emphasized her natural elegance. The room seemed to shift as people noticed her arrival. David's conversation with Amanda faltered mid-sentence, his face cycling through surprise, joy, and panic in rapid succession. "Nicole!" Marcus rushed over, genuine pleasure in her voice. "How wonderful that you could make it." "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Thompson. I brought this for David." Nicole handed over a carefully wrapped package, her voice steady despite the emotional chaos of being back in this house.
Rebecca's face had gone white, her carefully orchestrated evening suddenly spiraling out of control. Amanda looked confused, clearly sensing the shift in energy but not understanding its source. "Mom, who's this?" David's cousin Jennifer asked loudly, gesturing toward Nicole. "This is Nicole, David's girlfriend," Margaret said warmly, apparently forgetting about the break. "Ex-girlfriend," Rebecca corrected quickly, her voice sharp. "They're not together anymore." An uncomfortable silence fell over the immediate area. Nicole felt every eye on her, heat creeping up her neck as she realized she'd walked into exactly the kind of awkward situation she'd tried to avoid. "Well," she said with forced brightness, "I should probably say hello to the birthday boy." David had been frozen by the fireplace, but Nicole's approach forced him into motion. They met in the middle of the living room, the entire party watching their interaction with barely concealed fascination. "Hi," David said, his voice rough with emotion. "Happy birthday," Nicole replied, maintaining careful distance between them. "You look good." "So do you." I'm surprised you came. Marcus invited me. I hope that's okay." "Of course it's okay. I'm glad you're here." David glanced toward Amanda, who was watching the exchange with growing understanding. "Nicole, I should introduce you to David's friend Amanda," Rebecca interrupted, appearing suddenly beside them with Amanda in tow. "Amanda, this is Nicole. She was just leaving." The rudeness of the statement hung in the air like a slap. Nicole's cheeks burned, but before she could respond, Robert Thompson's voice cut through the tension. "Rebecca, that's enough." His tone was stern, the voice of a man who'd spent 30 years managing unruly teenagers. "Nicole is a guest in our home, and you will treat her with respect." Rebecca's mouth fell open in shock. Her father had never spoken to her that way in public, and certainly never to defend someone outside the family. "I was just trying to—" "You were being rude," Robert continued. "Apologize." The room was dead silent now, all pretense of normal party conversation abandoned. Rebecca looked around desperately, seeing disapproval on faces she'd expected to support her. Even some of David's friends were shaking their heads at her behavior. "I'm sorry," Rebecca said through gritted teeth, the words clearly forced. "Nicole," Margaret stepped forward, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry about that. Please, stay and enjoy the party. You're always welcome here." But Nicole had had enough public humiliation for one evening. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson, but I think Rebecca was right. I should go." She turned to leave, but David caught her arm. "Nicole, wait. Please don't let her drive you away." "I'm not," Nicole said quietly, gently removing his hand from her arm. "I'm choosing to leave because this isn't my place anymore. But thank you for reminding me why I made the right decision." The words hit David like a physical blow, but Nicole was already walking toward the door. Marcus, who'd been watching the entire scene with growing anger, followed her out. In the sudden quiet of the front yard, Nicole took a shaky breath. "You okay?"
Marcus asked. I will be. Thanks for inviting me. It was illuminating. Rebecca's a piece of work, Marcus said bluntly. I can't believe David doesn't see what she's doing. He sees it. He just chooses not to confront it. Nicole looked back at the house, where warm light spilled from the windows and the sound of resumed conversation drifted into the night. That tells me everything I need to know. Inside, the party continued, but the atmosphere was strained. Amanda quietly asked Rebecca for a ride home, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama she'd witnessed. David stood by the window, watching Nicole's car disappear down the street, his birthday celebration in ruins around him. Well, Robert said to his wife, I think it's time we had a serious conversation with our daughter about boundaries. Margaret nodded grimly. I'll call Nicole tomorrow to apologize properly. That girl didn't deserve to be treated that way in our home. Rebecca, realizing that her manipulation had backfired spectacularly, tried to salvage the situation. Mom, Dad, you don't understand. Nicole is manipulative. She came here tonight specifically to cause drama and make herself look like the victim. The only person who caused drama tonight was you, David said quietly, finally finding his voice. Nicole was nothing but gracious, even after you tried to humiliate her in front of everyone. I was protecting you. From what? From someone who loved me? From someone who made me happy? David's voice was rising now, 3 weeks of suppressed anger finally surfacing. Or were you protecting yourself from losing control over my life? Rebecca's face crumpled, her careful mask finally slipping. You don't understand. She was going to take you away from us, from me. The only person driving me away from this family is you, David said, grabbing his jacket from the closet. I'm done, Rebecca. I'm done letting you interfere in my relationships, and I'm definitely done letting you speak for me. He headed for the door, leaving his own birthday party behind. Inside, the party continued, but the atmosphere was strained. Amanda quietly asked Rebecca for a ride home, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama she'd witnessed. David stood by the window, watching Nicole's car disappear down the street, his birthday celebration in ruins around him. Well, Robert said to his wife, I think it's time we had a serious conversation with our daughter about boundaries. Margaret nodded grimly. I'll call Nicole tomorrow to apologize properly. That girl didn't deserve to be treated that way in our home. Rebecca, realizing that her manipulation had backfired spectacularly, tried to salvage the situation. Mom, Dad, you don't understand. Nicole is manipulative. She came here tonight specifically to cause drama and make herself look like the victim. The only person who caused drama tonight was you, David said quietly, finally finding his voice. Nicole was nothing but gracious, even after you tried to humiliate her in front of everyone. I was protecting you. From what? From someone who loved me? From someone who made me happy? David's voice was rising now, 3 weeks of suppressed anger finally surfacing. Or were you protecting yourself from losing control over my life? Rebecca's face crumpled, her careful mask finally slipping. You don't understand. She was going to take you away from us, from me. The only person driving me away from this family is you, David said, grabbing his jacket from the closet. I'm done, Rebecca. I'm done letting you interfere in my relationships, and I'm definitely done letting you speak for me. He headed for the door, leaving his own birthday party behind.
Where are you going? Margaret called after him. To try to fix what I should have protected in the first place. But when David reached Nicole's apartment, her car wasn't in the parking lot. When he called her phone, it went straight to voicemail, and when he tried her again the next morning, he discovered that her number had been blocked. Nicole Martinez had finally done what Rebecca had wanted all along. She'd removed herself from David's life completely. The only problem was, now David knew exactly who was really to blame. Dr. Patricia Evans had been Rebecca Thompson's thesis advisor for 2 years, and she prided herself on understanding the psychology students who passed through her program. But lately, she'd been growing concerned about Rebecca's increasingly personal approach to her research on family dynamics and romantic relationships. The concern deepened when Rebecca scheduled an emergency meeting the Monday after what she described as a family crisis weekend. "I'm having some difficulties with my brother's relationship choices," Rebecca began, settling into the chair across from Dr. Evans' desk. "It's affecting my research and my ability to maintain an objective perspective." Dr. Evans studied her students carefully. Rebecca looked haggard, her usual polished appearance replaced by dark circles under her eyes and nervous energy that seemed barely contained. "Tell me more about these difficulties." "David, my brother, has been involved with someone who displays classic signs of anxious attachment disorder. I've tried to help him see the unhealthy patterns, but he's resistant to psychological insight. This weekend, the situation came to a head at his birthday party." Rebecca recounted the evening's events, carefully framing herself as the concerned sister trying to protect her family from a manipulative outsider. But Dr. Evans had been studying human behavior for 30 years, and she heard things Rebecca didn't intend to reveal. "Rebecca," Dr. Evans said when the story concluded, "I need to ask you some direct questions. Have you been using your psychology training to manipulate your brother's relationship?" "I wouldn't call it manipulation. I've been providing professional insight into destructive patterns." "That's not what I asked." Dr. Evans leaned forward. "Have you been deliberately creating conflict between your brother and his girlfriend?" Rebecca's composure cracked slightly. "I've been protecting him from making a serious mistake." "By sabotaging his happiness?" The word hung in the air like an accusation. Rebecca's face flushed, and for a moment, Dr. Evans saw past the academic veneer to the insecure young woman underneath. "You don't understand," Rebecca said defensively. "Nicole was changing him. He was pulling away from the family, making decisions without consulting us. She was isolating him." Or maybe he was growing up and establishing appropriate boundaries with his family of origin. Dr. Evans's voice was gentle but firm. "Rebecca, what you're describing sounds like textbook enmeshment. You may have some unhealthy attachment patterns with your brother that you're projecting onto his romantic relationships." The session ended with Rebecca storming out, but Dr. Evans's words planted seeds of uncomfortable self-awareness that Rebecca couldn't shake. Meanwhile, David was experiencing his own crisis of recognition. He'd spent the weekend calling mutual friends, trying to reach Nicole through any channel available, but she'd been thorough in cutting contact. Emma, Nicole's college friend, had been particularly blunt when he'd tracked down her number. "She's done, David, and honestly, good for her. Nicole spent 3 months trying to fit into your family, and your sister spent 3 months tearing her down while you stood by and watched. Why would she want to go through that again?" "Because I love her, because I know I made a mistake." Love isn't enough if you don't have the backbone to protect it. Nicole deserves someone who will fight for her, not someone who needs his sister's permission to be happy. The conversation haunted David. Every interaction with Rebecca now felt loaded with new understanding of her manipulation. When she called Tuesday morning, supposedly to apologize for the birthday party scene, David heard the strings behind her words. "I'm sorry about how things went Saturday," Rebecca said, her voice carefully modulated. "I know I came across as harsh, but I was just trying to protect you from getting hurt again." "Hurt by who, Rebecca? By the woman who brought me homemade soup when I had the flu? By the woman who spent her Saturday helping Mom reorganize the garden shed? What exactly was Nicole going to hurt me with?" "David, you're not seeing clearly." "No, I'm seeing clearly for the first time." David's voice was steady but cold. "I'm seeing that every doubt I had about Nicole came from you. Every fight we had was because of something you said or implied. You didn't protect me, Rebecca. You sabotaged the best relationship I've ever had." "That's not fair." "What's not fair is that I lost the woman I love because I was too weak to tell my sister to stay out of my personal life." Rebecca tried a different approach. "David, I understand you're upset, but don't you think you're being a little dramatic? If Nicole really loved you, she would have fought harder for the relationship instead of just giving up." The manipulation was so blatant now that David wondered how he'd ever missed it.
She did fight, Rebecca. She fought every time you questioned her motives. She fought every time you analyzed her behavior. She fought every time you made her feel like she wasn't good enough for this family. The only person she couldn't fight was me, because I should have been fighting with her. That evening, David drove to his parents' house. He found them in the kitchen, his mother preparing dinner while his father read the newspaper at the breakfast bar. The domestic scene that had always comforted him now felt fragile, threatened by the revelations of the past few days. "We need to talk about Rebecca," he said without preamble. Margaret set down her knife, her face creasing with concern. "Honey, I know Saturday was difficult."
Saturday was just the latest incident. Mom, Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Have you noticed Rebecca interfering in my relationships before? Robert and Margaret exchanged a long look that told David everything he needed to know. We've had some concerns, Robert admitted carefully. Your mother and I have talked about Rebecca's intensity regarding your personal life. Why didn't you say anything? Because she's our daughter too, Margaret said softly, and because we hoped she would outgrow it as she matured. Well, she hasn't. She's gotten better at it. David sat down heavily at the kitchen table. Mom, I need to ask you something else. When Rebecca was telling you about Nicole's supposed problems, did any of it match what you observed yourself? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. No, she finally admitted. Nicole was always respectful, helpful, and genuinely interested in our family. I never saw any of the neediness or manipulation Rebecca described. Because it wasn't there. Rebecca created it. David's voice cracked with the weight of his realization. I let her convince me that the woman I love was somehow damaged or wrong for me. And now Nicole wants nothing to do with me. I don't blame her. What are you going to do? Robert asked. I don't know. Nicole blocked my number. She won't see me. And honestly, I'm not sure I deserve another chance anyway. What are you going to do? Robert asked. I don't know. Nicole blocked my number. She won't see me. And honestly, I'm not sure I deserve another chance anyway. Margaret reached across the table to squeeze her son's hand. If you really love her, you'll find a way to show her that you've learned from this mistake. How do I prove that I won't let Rebecca interfere again? By setting boundaries with your sister, Robert said firmly, by making it clear that your romantic relationships are off limits for her commentary or involvement. And if Rebecca doesn't accept those boundaries, then you accept the consequences, Margaret said sadly. David, we love Rebecca, but we can't enable behavior that's destructive to the rest of the family. Wednesday morning brought an unexpected opportunity. Sarah Chen called David's office directly, introducing herself as Nicole's boss and asking for a meeting. Confused but hopeful, David agreed to meet her for coffee that afternoon. Sarah was direct from the moment they sat down. Nicole doesn't know I'm here, and if you hurt her again, I will personally make your life difficult. But I think you should know that she's been offered a position with a firm in San Francisco. She's considering taking it. David felt the blood drain from his face. When? The decision needs to be made by Friday. The position starts in 2 weeks. Sarah studied him over her coffee cup. Nicole is one of the most talented architects I've ever worked with, and she deserves to be with someone who recognizes her worth. If you're not that person, tell me now, so I can encourage her to take the job and start fresh. I am that person, David said desperately. I was just too stupid to realize what I was risking. Then you need to prove it, and you need to prove it fast. How? She won't take my calls, she won't see me. Grand gestures don't work with Nicole. She's too smart for that. But you know what might work? Showing her that you've actually learned something, that you've dealt with the real problem. Sarah left David sitting in the coffee shop, his mind racing. He had less than 3 days to convince the love of his life not to move across the country. And the only way to do that was to finally confront the person who'd driven her away in the first place. But Rebecca wasn't going to make it easy. When David called to request a meeting, her response was telling. I don't think we should talk while you're so emotional, she said smoothly. You're not thinking clearly about any of this. Rebecca, I'm giving you one chance to have an honest conversation with me about what you've done.
If you refuse, I'm going to handle this situation in a way you won't like. There was a pause. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to tell Mom and Dad exactly how you manipulated my relationship with Nicole. I'm going to tell them about the psychological games, the planted doubts, the deliberate sabotage. And then I'm going to suggest they reconsider funding your graduate program if this is how you plan to use your education. The threat worked. Rebecca agreed to meet him Thursday evening, but David could hear the anger in her voice. Their final confrontation was approaching, and both siblings knew that after tomorrow night, their relationship would never be the same. What David didn't know was that Rebecca had one last card to play, a revelation that would change everything he thought she knew about her and force him to understand just how deep her deception had gone. Thursday evening found David waiting in a quiet corner booth at Morrison's Diner, a neutral location he'd chosen specifically because Rebecca couldn't make a scene in public. She arrived 15 minutes late, her usual power play, but David noticed immediately that something was different. Rebecca looked fragile in a way he'd never seen before. Her hair pulled back severely, no makeup, wearing a plain sweater that made her seem younger and more vulnerable. "Thank you for coming," David said as she slid into the booth across from him. "Did I have a choice?" Rebecca's voice was bitter. "You made it clear what would happen if I didn't." "Rebecca, I don't want to hurt you, but I need to understand why you did this, why you sabotaged my relationship with Nicole."
For a long moment, Rebecca stared at her hands folded on the table. When she finally looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You want the truth? The real truth? That's all I've ever wanted." Rebecca took a shaky breath. "I've been in love with you since I was 16 years old." The words hit David like a physical blow. He sat back in the booth, his mind reeling as everything suddenly made terrible sense. "What did you say?" "You heard me." Rebecca's voice was barely above a whisper. "I know how sick it sounds. I know it's wrong. But I can't help it, David. I've tried to get over it. Tried dating other people, tried therapy, tried everything. But you're the only person I've ever loved, and watching you with Nicole was destroying me." David felt nauseous. "Rebecca, we're siblings. We're family." "We're not blood related," Rebecca said quickly. "I was adopted, remember? My biological parents were drug addicts who gave me up when I was 3. Mom and Dad took me in, but legally, technically, we're not actually." "Stop." David's voice was sharp. "Just stop. It doesn't matter if we're blood related or not. You're my sister. You have been since we were children. This is insane." "Is it?" Rebecca's composure was cracking, years of suppressed emotions spilling out. "We grew up together, yes, but we're not siblings by blood or by law. We're 2 adults who could choose to be together if we wanted to." "Rebecca, no. There is no scenario where we could be together. Ever." David's voice was firm, but not unkind. "What you're describing isn't love. It's an obsession, and it's unhealthy." "Don't you dare psychoanalyze me," Rebecca snapped, her vulnerability instantly replaced by defensive anger. "I'm the one with the psychology degree. I understand what I'm feeling better than you do." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been using your education to justify and enable stalking behavior." The accusation hung between them like a landmine. Rebecca's face went white, then flushed red with humiliation and rage. "I never stalked you." "Didn't you? Monitoring my relationships, sabotaging them when they got serious, inserting yourself into every aspect of my personal life? What would you call that?" "Protection," Rebecca said desperately. "I was protecting you from making mistakes, from women who would hurt you or weren't good enough for you, or from women who might actually make me happy enough that I wouldn't need you anymore." David's voice was gentle now, seeing his sister's pain despite her revulsion at her revelation. "Rebecca, this has to stop. You have to get help." "I don't need help. I need you to understand that we could be happy together. I know you better than anyone. I love you more than anyone ever will. Nicole could never love you the way I do." "Nicole loves me in a healthy way," David interrupted. "She wants me to be my own person, to make my own choices, to grow and change. What you're describing isn't love, Rebecca.
It's possession. Rebecca's tears finally spilled over. You don't understand what it's been like, watching you with other women, pretending to be supportive while dying inside. Do you know how many nights I've cried myself to sleep thinking about you with Jessica, with Nicole? Then why didn't you get help? Why didn't you tell someone how you were feeling instead of acting on it? Because I thought maybe if I could just prove that these other women weren't right for you, you might eventually see that I was the one who truly understood you. Rebecca wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I thought if I could just eliminate the competition, you might notice me as more than just your little sister. David felt a wave of profound sadness wash over him. Rebecca, even if we weren't family, which we are, I would never feel that way about you. I love you as my sister, but that's all I will ever feel for you. You need to accept that and find a way to move forward. With who? Rebecca's voice was raw with pain. I've tried dating other people, David, but they're not you. They don't know me the way you do. They don't care about the same things. They don't make me feel the way you do. Because you won't let them, David said sadly. You can't build a real relationship with someone when you're measuring them against a fantasy that was never real to begin with. The truth of his words seemed to hit Rebecca like a slap. She stared at him for a long moment, and David could see something breaking behind her eyes. So, what happens now? She asked quietly. Now, you get professional help, real help, not from someone in your graduate program, but from an actual therapist who can help you work through these feelings. And us? Our family? David was quiet for a long moment, considering. I don't know, Rebecca. What you've done to Nicole, what you've done to me, it's going to take time to rebuild trust. And it's going to require you to respect boundaries that you've never respected before. What boundaries? You don't get to have opinions about my romantic relationships anymore. You don't get to analyze my girlfriends or offer professional insight about their psychological profiles. You don't get to insert yourself into my personal life in any way unless I specifically ask for your input. Rebecca flinched as if he'd struck her. You're cutting me out of my life. I'm setting healthy boundaries. If you can't respect them, then yes, I'll have to limit our contact. And Nicole, are you going to tell her about this conversation? I'm going to tell her everything, David said firmly. She deserves to know why you targeted her, and she deserves a real apology for what you put her through. She'll never forgive me. Maybe not, but that's not your choice anymore. Rebecca sat in silence for several minutes, processing the finality of David's words. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and defeated. I know you think I'm sick. Maybe I am. But David, I want you to know that when I said I love you, I meant it. Everything I did because I love you. I know you believe that, David said gently. But love doesn't try to control or manipulate. Love doesn't sabotage someone's happiness to serve its own needs. What you're describing is possessiveness, not love. Then I guess I don't know what love really is. No, David agreed sadly. I don't think you do. But you can learn, Rebecca. You can get help and learn to build healthy relationships with people who can actually love you back the way you deserve. What if I don't want anyone else? Then you'll be alone, and that will be your choice. The harsh finality of his words seemed to snap something in Rebecca. She straightened in her seat, wiping away the last of her tears, and David could see her rebuilding her emotional walls in real time. Fine, she said, her voice cold and controlled again. I'll get help. I'll respect your boundaries. But David, I want you to remember something. What? Nicole left you. Despite everything you think I did wrong, despite all my supposed manipulation, she left you. She didn't fight for your relationship. She didn't try to understand your family dynamics. She just walked away when things got difficult. Is that really the kind of woman you want to spend your life with? The parting shot was expertly aimed, designed to plant one last seed of doubt. But David had finally learned to recognize Rebecca's manipulation tactics. You're right, he said quietly. Nicole did leave me because I gave her no reason to stay, because I chose to believe your lies instead of trusting my own judgment about the woman I love. because I was too weak to protect her from you." Rebecca's expression faltered, her final manipulation attempt failing completely. "Nicole didn't leave because she's not strong enough for this family," David continued. "She left because she's too strong to accept being treated the way you treated her. And the fact that you can't see the difference tells me everything I need to know about how much work you have ahead of you." David stood up, leaving money on the table for their untouched coffee. "Goodbye, Rebecca. When you're ready to get real help and make real changes, call me. Until then, I need you to stay out of my life." He walked away without looking back, leaving Rebecca alone in the booth with the wreckage of her carefully constructed world. For the first time in her life, she had no plan, no manipulation, no psychological strategy to fix what she'd broken. All she had was the truth, and the devastating realization that the truth might have come too late to save anything at all. Outside the diner, David sat in his car for several minutes, his hands shaking as the full weight of Rebecca's confession settled over him. His sister, the person he'd trusted most in the world, had been systematically destroying his happiness for years, driven by feelings that made him sick to even contemplate. But there was no time to process his own trauma. Nicole was making her decision about San Francisco tomorrow, and he had less than 18 hours to prove that he'd finally learned to choose love over family dysfunction. The question was, would she even give him the chance to try? Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching Nicole's mood as she sat in her apartment staring at the San Francisco job contract. Her suitcase lay open on the bed, half-packed with the kind of careful efficiency that came from someone who've moved too many times before. Her phone buzzed, another message from David that she wouldn't read. She'd seen his name appear on her screen 17 times since Wednesday, each notification a small knife twist of pain and regret. Whatever he had to say, it was too late. The knock on her door came at exactly 9 a.m. Nicole assumed it was her landlord about the lease termination. But when she opened the door, Margaret Thompson stood in the hallway, holding a bouquet of sunflowers and wearing an expression of profound remorse. "Mrs. Thompson, please, let me speak. I know David has been trying to reach you, and I know you don't want to hear from our family. But there are things you need to know before you make your decision about San Francisco." Against her better judgment, Nicole stepped aside and let David's mother into her apartment. Margaret set the flowers on the kitchen counter and turned to face Nicole with tears in her eyes. "I owe you an apology that's long overdue. For months, I watched my daughter undermine your relationship with David, and I said nothing. I told myself it was family loyalty, but the truth is, I was a coward." "Mrs. Thompson, Rebecca is sick, Nicole. Not physically, but psychologically. We learned this week that her interference in David's relationships comes from disturbed feelings she's harbored for years." Margaret's voice broke slightly. "She's been in love with David since she was a teenager. What she did to you wasn't sibling protectiveness, it was jealousy and obsession." Nicole sank onto her couch, the revelation hitting her like a physical blow. She's in love with David? David confronted her last night. She confessed everything. The manipulation, the psychological games, the deliberate sabotage. She's been systematically destroying his relationships because she couldn't bear to see him happy with anyone else.
Nicole felt a strange mix of vindication and horror. So I wasn't imagining it. She really was trying to break us up. From the very beginning. And David, oh, Nicole, David is devastated. Not just about losing you, but about realizing how blind he was to what Rebecca was doing. He spent the last 2 days trying to reach you, trying to explain, trying to apologize. "It's too late for apologies." Nicole's voice was steady, but Margaret could see the pain in her eyes. Even if Rebecca was manipulating him, David still chose to believe her over me. He still chose his family's approval over our relationship. "You're right," Margaret said simply. "He did make those choices, and they were wrong. But Nicole, I've known my son for 28 years, and I've never seen him as destroyed as he is right now. He knows he failed you. He knows he doesn't deserve another chance, but he loves you enough to keep trying anyway."
Nicole looked toward her packed suitcase, visible through the bedroom doorway. I have to be in San Francisco by Monday. I've already accepted the position. Have you signed the contract? Nicole hesitated. Not yet. Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is from David. He asked me to give it to you if you wouldn't see him. He said to tell you that he understands if you can't forgive him, but he needs you to know the truth about everything that happened. Nicole stared at the envelope, her name written in David's familiar handwriting. Mrs. Thompson, I can't go through this again. I can't be with someone who might choose his family over me the next time there's a conflict. What if there is no next time? What if David has finally learned to choose you first? How can I trust that? Margaret was quiet for a moment. You can't. Trust has to be earned back, and that takes time. But Nicole, David has cut Rebecca out of his life completely. He told his father and me that if we can't support his choice to be with you, we'll lose him too. He's prepared to walk away from all of us if that's what it takes to prove his commitment to you. The words hung in the air between them. Nicole had never asked David to choose between her and his family. That had been Rebecca's manipulation, making it seem like an either-or situation when it never needed to be. I don't want him to lose his family because of me, Nicole said quietly. Then don't let him. Come home with me. Talk to him. If you decide you still can't forgive him, then at least you'll know you gave love one more chance. Nicole looked around her apartment, at the packed boxes, the bare walls, the life she was preparing to leave behind. In San Francisco, she'd have a fresh start, a clean slate, no painful memories. But she'd also have no David, no hope of the future they'd planned together, no chance to see if love could really overcome the damage that had been done. She picked up David's letter with trembling hands. An hour later, Nicole found David sitting on the bench where they'd had their first real conversation, outside the coffee shop where they'd met. He looked up as she approached, hope and fear warring in his expression. You got my letter? I did. Nicole sat beside him, careful to maintain distance between them. Your mother told me about Rebecca's confession? David closed his eyes. I'm so sorry, Nicole, for all of it, for not seeing what she was doing, for not protecting you, for being too weak to trust my own feelings about you. I was right about her from the beginning, wasn't I? You were right about everything, and I was too scared of family conflict to admit it. David turned to face her fully. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know that losing you was the wake-up call I should have had months ago. Nicole was quiet for a long moment. What happened to Rebecca? She's starting therapy next week, and she's transferring to a different graduate program in Seattle. She understands that if she wants any chance of rebuilding our relationship as siblings, she needs professional help and physical distance. And us? David's voice was barely above a whisper. There is no us unless you want there to be. I know I broke your trust. I know I hurt you. If you decide to go to San Francisco, I'll understand. But if you're willing to try again, I swear to you that I will never let anyone, family or otherwise, come between us again. Nicole looked at this man she'd loved so deeply, seeing the pain and growth in his eyes. The old David had been willing to sacrifice their relationship to keep peace with his family. This David was prepared to sacrifice his family to protect their relationship. I'm not going to San Francisco, she said finally. David's breath caught. You're not? I'm staying. Not for you, not yet, but because this is my home too, and I'm not going to let Rebecca Thompson chase me away from the life I've built here. It wasn't the reconciliation David had hoped for, but it was something. It was a chance. 6 months later, Nicole Martinez and David Thompson were having coffee at the same shop where they'd first met. They'd spent those months rebuilding trust slowly, carefully, with the help of a couples therapist who taught them how to communicate without the toxic patterns Rebecca had created. David had kept his word about boundaries, When Rebecca tried to insert herself into his life through their parents, he'd remained firm. When she'd attempted to contact Nicole directly with a letter of apology, David had respected Nicole's decision not to respond. "I have something for you," David said, reaching into his jacket pocket. Nicole raised an eyebrow. "It's not my birthday." "It's the anniversary of the day we met. 1 year ago, I spilled coffee on the most amazing woman I'd ever seen." David pulled out a small velvet box. "And today, I want to ask that same woman to marry me. But this time, I'm asking as someone who's learned to put her first, always." Nicole stared at the ring, a simple solitaire that caught the afternoon light streaming through the coffee shop windows. Around them, life continued as normal, but for Nicole, time stood completely still. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly. "Are you really sure you can choose me over family expectations, over keeping the peace, over all the things that felt more important than us before?" "I've never been more sure of anything," David said. "Nicole Martinez, will you marry me?" She looked at this man who'd broken her heart and then fought to earn it back, who'd faced the ugliest truths about his family and chosen love anyway, who'd proven over 6 months that he'd really learned to choose her first. "Yes," she whispered, and then louder, "Yes, I'll marry you." As David slipped the ring onto her finger, Nicole thought about how different their story could have been. If she'd given up after the ski trip, if she'd taken the San Francisco job, if she'd let Rebecca's manipulation win. But sometimes love gets a second chance. Sometimes people really do learn and grow and become worthy of the gift they almost threw away. And sometimes the story that seemed destined to end in heartbreak finds its way to happily ever after instead. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.